The alarms screamed through the space station's corridors, red lights flashing in rhythm with the piercing sound. Zekthor ran through the crowded marketplace, his three-fingered hands clutching a data chip that was worth more than entire planets. Behind him, he could hear the heavy footsteps of station security, and something worse, the professional silence of bounty hunters. His blue-scaled skin glistened with sweat as he pushed through a crowd of traders. The Korvax system was supposed to be neutral territory, a place where anyone could do business without questions. But neutrality meant nothing when you had 50 million credits on your head. Zekthor was a Vrillian, a species known for their skill with information and technology. He was slim and tall, with large eyes that could see in multiple light spectrums. For 15 years, he had worked as an information broker, buying and selling secrets to the highest bidder. It was a dangerous job, but it paid well. At least, it had paid well until 3 days ago. 3 days ago, Zekthor had made the biggest mistake of his life. He had stolen classified military data from the Hegemony Council itself. The Council ruled over 47 star systems and commanded fleets that could burn worlds. They did not forgive theft, especially not theft of their deepest military secrets. The data chip in his hand contained information about the Council's secret weapons programs, their spy networks, and evidence of war crimes they had committed against smaller civilizations. It was worth billions of credits to the right buyer. But first, Zekthor had to survive long enough to sell it. He ducked into a side corridor and pressed himself against the wall, trying to catch his breath. His ship was docked in Bay 17, but that was 3 levels up and half a kilometer away. Between him and safety were dozens of hunters who wanted him dead or alive. The bounty didn't care which. A voice crackled over his personal communicator. Zekthor of Vrillia, this is station security. Surrender now, and you will receive a fair trial. Zekthor almost laughed. A fair trial meant execution. The Hegemony Council had already declared him a traitor. They had released his name, his species, his ship registration, and his last known location to every bounty hunter in the galaxy. They wanted him to suffer before he died. He pulled out a small device from his belt and pressed a button. Somewhere in the station's computer system, a virus he had planted began to work. Security cameras went dark. Door locks malfunctioned. Environmental controls started reporting false emergencies. It would only buy him a few minutes, but a few minutes might be enough. Zekthor ran toward the nearest lift tube. As the doors opened, he saw a figure waiting inside a Kresh warrior, over 2 meters tall and covered in chitinous armor. The Kresh's 4 eyes locked onto Zekthor, and its mandibles clicked with pleasure. 50 million credits, the Kresh said, reaching for the plasma rifle on its back. Zekthor threw the scrambler device at the warrior's feet. It exploded in a flash of electromagnetic energy. The Kresh roared as its armor's systems shorted out, and Zekthor ran past, slamming the lift controls to send it down to the lower levels. He took the stairs instead, climbing as fast as his legs could carry him. His species wasn't built for physical combat, but fear gave him strength. Every corner could hide another hunter. Every shadow could mean death. When he reached the docking level, he saw his ship through the transparent aluminum windows. The Wandering Star was a small courier vessel, fast and equipped with a good jump drive. It wasn't armed with heavy weapons, but it didn't need to be. Zekthor had always relied on speed and cleverness to survive. The docking bay was chaos. Station alarms were still blaring, and maintenance crews ran in every direction trying to respond to the false emergencies Zekthor had created. He slipped through the crowd, keeping his head down. 50 meters from his ship, someone stepped into his path. She was a Selenar, a species that looked almost human except for the silver skin and eyes that glowed with their own light. She wore armor made from some dark metal and carried 2 energy blades at her sides. Zekthor recognized her from the bounty hunter database's Silvara, one of the most successful hunters in the outer systems. Going somewhere? She asked, her voice soft and dangerous. Zekthor's hand moved to the plasma pistol at his side, but Silvara was faster. One of her blades was at his throat before he could draw his weapon. "The council wants you alive," she said, "but they'll pay almost as much for your corpse. Don't make me choose the easy option." Zekthor's mind raced. He couldn't fight her. He couldn't run. But he could talk. "The data I stole," he said quickly. "It's not just military secrets. It's evidence. Evidence of what the council did to the Trell worlds." Silvara's glowing eyes narrowed. Everyone in the galaxy had heard rumors about the Trell worlds. An entire species had disappeared overnight. Their 3 planets left as lifeless rocks. The council claimed it was a plague, but there had always been whispers of something worse. "You have proof?" Silvara asked. "Detailed records, orders, communications." "Everything." Zekthor's voice was desperate. "The council didn't just destroy the Trell. They experimented on them first. Biological weapons. They used an entire species as test subjects." For a moment, Silvara's blade moved away from his throat by a centimeter. Just a centimeter. But it was enough. Zekthor triggered the emergency release on his belt. A cloud of smoke and chemical irritants exploded between them. Silvara cursed and stumbled back, her sensitive eyes burning from the chemicals. Zekthor ran. He heard Silvara shouting behind him, calling for backup. But he didn't look back. His ship was 20 meters away. 10 meters. 5. The boarding ramp dropped as he approached, his ship's computer recognizing his biosignature. He ran up the ramp and slammed the emergency close button. The ramp pulled up just as plasma bolts started hitting the hull. "Start the engines!" he shouted to the ship's computer. "Emergency departure. Authorization Zekthor Alpha 7. The ship's engines roared to life. Through the cockpit window, Zekthor could see bounty hunters running toward his ship. More plasma fire lit up the docking bay. Station security was trying to lock down the bay doors, but his virus was still working, keeping the controls scrambled. The Wandering Star lifted off its landing struts and shot forward through the bay doors just as they started to close. The ship scraped against the closing doors with a horrible screech of metal on metal. But then they were through, out into open space. "Multiple ships pursuing," the computer announced in its calm, emotionless voice. "Detecting 17 vessels on intercept courses. Weapons lock warnings from 14 targets." Zekthor threw himself into the pilot's seat and grabbed the controls. His hands moved across the console, bringing up defensive systems and plotting escape routes. The space around Korvax station was crowded with ships, traders, passenger liners, mining vessels. He could use that. "Evasive pattern Delta," he ordered. "Head for the asteroid belt. Full speed." The ship dove toward the massive field of asteroids that surrounded the system's outer planets. Behind him, the bounty hunters followed. Zekthor's scanners showed their ships a mix of fighters, corvettes, and modified freighters. All of them were faster and better armed than his courier vessel. But Zekthor knew these asteroid fields. He had run cargo through them dozens of times, learning every major cluster and danger zone. The hunters were skilled, but this was his territory. The Wandering Star weaved between spinning rocks the size of mountains. Zekthor's hands moved constantly, making micro-adjustments to avoid collisions. Behind him, 2 hunter ships weren't as lucky. One clipped an asteroid and went spinning away, its hull breached. The other tried to follow Zekthor through a narrow gap between 3 massive rocks and misjudged the distance. The explosion lit up Zekthor's rear sensors, but 15 ships still followed. "Warning," the computer said. "Hull stress at 60%. Sustained damage to rear shielding. Port engine running hot." Zekthor ignored the warnings. He had to focus on flying. One mistake would mean death. He led the hunters deeper into the asteroid belt, into regions where the rocks were smaller but far more numerous. It was like flying through a storm of stone bullets. His ship's shields flared constantly as small rocks bounced off them. More hunters fell behind, unable to match his piloting. but the best ones stayed on his tail. Silvera was there, in her sleek fighter. So was a Krell battlecruiser and a pack of Draxon raiders flying in tight formation. "Weapons lock," the computer warned. "Incoming missiles." Zekthor pulled the ship into a spiral, using a large asteroid as cover. The missiles impacted the rock, sending fragments flying in all directions. He used the debris cloud to break line of sight with his pursuers, then pushed the engines to maximum burn. The gap between him and the hunters widened. 500 meters. 1 kilometer. 2 kilometers. But his engines were overheating. Red warning lights covered his console. The port engine was shaking, threatening to tear itself apart. "Come on," Zekthor whispered to his ship. "Just a little further." He cleared the asteroid belt and found himself in open space. His navigation computer was already calculating jump coordinates, but the jump drive needed 90 seconds to charge. That was too long. The hunters were emerging from the asteroid field. Their weapons were charging. In seconds, they would open fire, and his damaged shields wouldn't survive. Zekthor made a decision. He pointed his ship toward a nearby moon and activated the gravity assist calculation. It was a risky maneuver, using a planet's gravity to slingshot around it at high speed. If he miscalculated, he would crash into the surface. But if he succeeded, he would gain enough velocity to jump before the hunters could catch him. The wandering star dove toward the moon. Alarms screamed as the ship entered the upper atmosphere. The hull began to heat up from friction. The ship shook violently. "Hull stress at 90%, the computer reported. "Structural failure imminent." "Not yet," Zekthor growled. "Hold together." The moon's surface rushed up at him, gray and cratered. He could see mountains and valleys in terrible detail. At the last possible second, he pulled up, skimming along the surface at a height of less than 1 kilometer. The gravity pulled at his ship, accelerating it around the moon's curve. The hunters tried to follow, but they were going too fast and couldn't make the turn. Most of them pulled up to avoid crashing. 2 weren't fast enough and became craters on the moon's surface. As Zekthor completed the slingshot maneuver, his jump drive indicator turned green. "Jump drive ready," the computer announced. "Jump," Zekthor commanded. "Random coordinates. Any direction away from here." Space twisted around his ship. Reality seemed to fold in on itself, and then the stars stretched into lines. The wandering star disappeared from normal space, entering the faster-than-light corridor of jump space. Zekthor collapsed back in his chair, his whole body shaking. But he knew it wasn't over. The hunters would track him. They would find him again. 50 million credits was too much money to ignore. He needed a plan. He needed somewhere to hide, somewhere the hunters couldn't follow. He pulled up a star chart and began searching for options. As he studied the map, his eyes kept drifting to one region that was marked in red with warning symbols: human space. Everyone in the galaxy knew to avoid human space. The humans were a young species, barely 200 years into interstellar travel. But they had earned a reputation that made even the Hegemony Council cautious. Humans didn't play by the normal rules. They didn't negotiate. They didn't compromise. And they protected their territory with absolute ruthlessness. But maybe, Zekthor thought, that was exactly what he needed. A place so dangerous that even bounty hunters wouldn't dare follow. Zekthor spent 3 days running. 3 days of jumping from system to system, never staying in one place for more than a few hours. 3 days of checking scanners constantly, looking for the ships that he knew were hunting him. They found him again in the Skelis system, a mining colony on the edge of civilized space. He had stopped only to refuel and buy supplies. But somehow, they knew. Maybe someone at the station recognized him. Maybe one of the hunters had planted a tracker on his ship during the chase at Korvax. It didn't matter. What mattered was that his scanners were now showing 12 ships on intercept courses. "Destination required," his ship's computer said in its calm voice. Zekthor pulled up the star chart again. His hands shook as he scrolled through the display. Every direction seemed blocked. The hunters were spreading out, cutting off his escape routes. They were being smart this time, coordinating their attack. To his left, 3 ships. To his right, 4 more. Above and below, the rest of the pack. They were forming a sphere around him, closing in from all sides. His fuel was low. His shields were still damaged from the asteroid field chase. His engines were barely holding together. He couldn't outrun them this time. Come on, he muttered, searching the star chart desperately. There has to be somewhere. Then he saw it. A gap in the hunter formation. One direction where no ships were moving to block him. He zoomed in on the chart and felt his blood run cold. That direction led to human space. The hunters weren't covering that direction because they assumed no one would be stupid enough to go there. Zekthor stared at the chart. He had heard stories about humans since he was young. Every species in the galaxy had stories about them. The humans who never forgot an insult. The humans who turned diplomatic incidents into wars. The humans who had once destroyed 4 entire pirate worlds just to make a point. His navigation computer brought up the information file on human space. It was marked with red warning symbols and skulls, the universal sign for extreme danger. Human territory. The file read: Species classification. Sapient bipeds. Technology level. Advanced. Military capability. Extreme. Diplomatic status. Restricted contact. Warning. Human government enforces absolute territorial sovereignty. Unauthorized entry by armed vessels results in immediate military response. Survival rate of unauthorized armed incursions. 0%. Approach only through designated diplomatic channels with prior authorization. 0% survival rate. That was what made Zekthor pause, but then his scanner alert blared. The hunters were less than 10 minutes away now. He could see them on his display, 12 deadly ships closing in like predators surrounding wounded prey. Calculating jump to human border, Zekthor said. Warning, his computer responded. Destination is flagged as restricted territory. Unauthorized entry may result in hostile action. Recommend alternate route. I don't have an alternate route. Calculate the jump. Calculating. Jump solution ready. Warning. This course will take us to the human territorial boundary. Additional warning. Insufficient fuel for a second jump. If this destination proves unsuitable. Zekthor closed his eyes. It was a terrible choice. But it was the only choice. Jump, he said. The stars stretched into lines. Space folded. The wandering star disappeared from the Skelis system just as the first hunter ships arrived at his last position. When Zekthor emerged from jump space, he found himself at the edge of something that made his skin crawl with instinctive fear. The border of human space was marked by hundreds of automated buoys, each one broadcasting warnings in 47 different languages. Zekthor's computer picked up the transmission and displayed it on his screen. Warning. You are approaching the territorial space of the Human Stellar Alliance. All vessels must receive authorization before crossing this boundary. Unauthorized entry by armed vessels will be treated as an act of war. Unauthorized entry by unarmed vessels will result in immediate detention. To request authorization, proceed to designated diplomatic channel Alpha 7 and submit proper documentation. Response time to authorization requests: 72 hours. This is your only warning. The message repeated over and over, in every language, from every buoy. There must have been thousands of the buoys, forming a wall of warnings around the entire human territory. Zekthor had never seen anything like it. Most species marked their borders with simple beacons. The humans had created a barrier of automated sentinels, each one presumably equipped with sensors and weapons. Beyond the buoys, Zekthor could see nothing unusual. Just normal space. Stars in the distance, the usual darkness. But the sensors on his ship were picking up something strange. Energy signatures. Lots of them. His computer couldn't identify what they were, but they were there, waiting beyond the boundary. Detecting multiple vessels emerging from jump space, his computer announced. Behind us. Distance. 2 million kilometers and closing. The hunters had followed him. Of course they had. They had probably calculated his most likely escape route. The moment he jumped, Zekthor pulled up his rear sensors. 12 ships. No. More were arriving. 15. 18. 20. More hunters had joined the pack, drawn by the enormous bounty. They were spreading out again, moving to surround him. But this time, they were moving slowly, carefully. They had seen where he was. They knew he was at the human border. Zekthor's communicator crackled to life. Multiple incoming transmissions from the hunter ships. He accepted one. A face appeared on his screen, a Krell, with thick scaled skin and small eyes that glittered with intelligence. Zekthor, the Krell said. This is Commander Rax of the Crimson Talon. I'm speaking for the hunting pack. We have you surrounded. You can't run anymore. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. You'll kill me, Zekthor said. The Council wants you alive, Rax replied. We'll honor that. You have my word. Road. Zekthor almost laughed. The word of a bounty hunter meant nothing. But he knew Rax was probably telling the truth about keeping him alive. The Council would want to interrogate him before execution. They would want to know who he had talked to, who might have copies of the data. I need time to think, Zekthor said. You have 5 minutes, Rax said. Then we start shooting. The transmission ended. Zekthor looked at his screens. Behind him, 20 hunter ships, all with weapons charged and ready. In front of him, the human border, with its wall of warning buoys and unknown dangers beyond. 5 minutes to decide between certain death and probable death. His hands moved to the controls. The decision was already made. Really. He had known it would come to this from the moment he saw the gap in the hunter formation. Computer. Plot a course across the human border. Best speed. 9. 9 mine. 9. Warning. This action violates. I know. Do it anyway. The ship's engines fired. The wandering star accelerated toward the line of buoys. Immediately, every communication channel exploded with noise. He's running for human space, someone shouted. Cut him off. Block his approach. But none of the hunter ships moved forward. They accelerated to keep pace with Zekthor, but they stayed behind him, maintaining their distance from the border. Zekthor's ship crossed the line marked by the buoys, and every single hunter ship stopped. Zekthor watched his rear sensors in disbelief. 20 ships, all of them just stopping. They held position exactly at the border, not 1 meter past the buoy line. What? He whispered. His communicator lit up again. Multiple incoming transmissions. He opened a general channel and was immediately hit with a wall of sound. The hunters were all talking at once, shouting, arguing. Not going in there? 50 million credits? Are you insane? It's not worth it. Remember what happened to the Corsair fleet. Rax's voice cut through the chaos. All ships, maintain position. Do not cross the border. Zekthor opened a direct channel to Rax. What's going on? Why did you stop? Rax's face appeared on the screen again. The Krell's expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes. Something that looked almost like fear. You just crossed into human space, Rax said quietly. The bounty on your head isn't worth following you there. What do you mean? It's 50 million credits. No amount of credits is worth what the humans will do if we cross that line armed and unauthorized, Rax said. He glanced at something off-screen, then looked back at Zekthor. You don't understand what you've just done. You think you're safe now. You're not. You've just made things worse for yourself. Worse? How could things possibly be worse than 20 bounty hunters trying to kill me? Worse. Rax was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Good luck, Zekthor. You're going to need it." The transmission ended. Zekthor sat in his pilot chair, staring at his screens. Behind him, the entire hunter fleet was just sitting there, not pursuing, not attacking, just watching him fly deeper into human space. Another transmission came through. This one was from a ship. Zekthor recognized Silvara's fighter. "You stupid fool," Silvara said when he accepted the transmission. Her silver face was tight with anger. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I survived," Zekthor said. "That's all that matters." "No. You've traded one death sentence for another." Silvara shook her head. "We can't follow you into human space. The humans have standing orders to destroy any armed vessel that crosses their border without authorization. And they don't just destroy the ship. They track down where it came from. They hunt down the ship's organization. They make examples." "You're exaggerating," Zekthor said, but his voice was uncertain. 30 years ago, a pirate fleet raided a small human mining colony," Silvara said. "Just one colony. Maybe 5,000 people. The pirates killed about 100 humans and stole cargo worth a few million credits." Zekthor didn't answer. The humans didn't just hunt down that pirate fleet. They found the pirates' home bases. 4 worlds. 4 entire worlds where the pirates had families, where they had built cities and stations and settlements. The humans gave them one warning, one chance to surrender every single pirate who had participated in the raid. Silvara's glowing eyes were bright with remembered fear. The pirates laughed at them. They thought the humans were bluffing. "What happened?" Zekthor asked. Though part of him didn't want to know. The humans sent their fleet. They didn't negotiate. They didn't make threats. They just arrived and started firing. When they were done, those 4 worlds were dead rocks. Every station destroyed. Every ship atomized. Millions dead. The humans broadcast the footage across the entire galaxy with one message. "This is what happens when you harm our people." One message. One message. Zekthor felt cold. That's genocide. That's humans," Silvara said. "They don't start fights. But they finish them. Always. And they never, ever forget." She leaned closer to her camera. "Every bounty hunter in this fleet knows that story. Every one of us knows what will happen if we cross that border. The humans will destroy us. Then, they'll track down our home bases. Then they'll track down our families. They'll burn everything we ever built. Everyone we ever cared about. Just to make a point." "You're trying to scare me," Zekthor said. "I'm trying to warn you," Silvara replied. "We can't follow you into human space, but the humans are going to find you, and when they do..." She trailed off, then said quietly, "The bounty is still active. If you somehow survive and come back out, we'll be waiting. But honestly, I don't think we'll ever see you again." The transmission ended. Zekthor sat alone in his cockpit, surrounded by warnings and sensor displays showing him alone in the vast darkness of human space. Behind him, the fleet of hunters sat at the border, unwilling to cross a simple, invisible line. And ahead of him, somewhere in the darkness, were the humans. He had thought he was escaping death by coming here. Now he was starting to realize he might have just flown straight into it. The hunter fleet remained at the human border for 6 hours. 20 ships, all powered up and armed, all just sitting in space and staring at the boundary line as if it were made of solid steel instead of empty space. Inside the Crimson Talon, Commander Rax stood in his command center, watching the long-range sensors. Zekthor's ship had disappeared from their screens hours ago, swallowed up by the vast darkness of human territory. "Sir," his tactical officer said, "we're receiving messages from other ships. They're asking for orders." Rax didn't respond immediately. He was thinking about 50 million credits. That was enough money to retire, enough to buy a small moon and live in luxury for the rest of his life. All he had to do was cross an invisible line and capture one small courier ship with one frightened information broker inside. Sir? The tactical officer prompted. Stand down, Rax said quietly. We're not going in. But the bounty. I said stand down. Rax's voice was sharp. He took a breath and continued more calmly. Send a message to the other ships. The hunt is over. Anyone who wants to wait here on the chance that Zekthor comes back out, that's their choice. But we're not crossing that line. The tactical officer hesitated. Sir, with respect, we've crossed into restricted territories before. The Vax Nebula, the contested zone, even the edge of Council military space, that one time. Why is this different? Rax turned to look at his officer. The young Krell had only been with his crew for 2 years. He was skilled and brave, but he hadn't been around long enough to learn which lines you never crossed. Pull up the ship database, Rax said. Search for the Corsair fleet. The officer's claws moved across his console. Corsair Fleet, independent pirate organization. Operated in the outer systems between. Wait. The officer's eyes widened as he read further. It says they were destroyed. Total loss of all vessels and personnel. 43 ships and over 12,000 individuals. Cause of destruction. Military action by Human Stellar Alliance. Date: 18 years ago. The officer looked up. They lost their entire fleet? They lost more than that, Rax said. He pulled up a star chart and marked several systems. The Corsair fleet was based in the Tarsus cluster. 7 stations, 4 mining colonies, and 2 agricultural worlds. About 5 million people total. Most of them families of the fleet members. Was based? The officer asked. The Corsairs made a mistake, Rax said. They thought human space was easy prey. Young species, small territory, limited defenses. They did what pirates do. They raided a human transport convoy near the border. Killed everyone on board, about 200 humans. Took the cargo and ran. The officer was listening carefully now. The humans sent them a message, Rax continued. Return everything you stole. Surrender everyone who participated in the attack. Face trial for murder. The Corsairs laughed. They'd been raiding for decades. Nobody had ever been able to stop them. What did the humans do? They sent a fleet, not a small patrol, not a diplomatic envoy with threats, an actual war fleet. 20 capital ships, hundreds of support vessels, thousands of fighters. Rax pulled up an image on the main screen. It showed a dark planet with glowing scars across its surface. This was Tarsus Prime, the Corsairs' main base. Population: 2 million. Now, population: 0. The officer stared at the image in horror. The humans didn't negotiate, didn't make threats. They arrived, gave one warning for civilians to evacuate, then waited exactly 1 hour. After that, they opened fire. Rax cycled through more images. Dead stations, burning colonies, debris fields that used to be ships. It took them 1 week to destroy everything the Corsairs had built over a century. Every station, every colony, every ship, everything. But the civilians, the officer stammered. Did they evacuate? Some did. Most didn't. They didn't believe the humans would really do it. They thought it was a bluff. Rax closed the images. The humans broadcast everything. They wanted the galaxy to watch. They wanted everyone to see what happens when you cross their borders and hurt their people. 5 million dead, just to make a point. The command center was silent. After that, Rax said, the Galactic Council filed a formal protest. Called it genocide. Called it excessive force. Demanded the humans face consequences. He smiled without humor. You know what the humans said? They said, we warned them. We gave them a chance to surrender. They chose violence. We chose to end the threat permanently. Then they looked at the council and said, anyone else want to test our borders? Nobody did, the officer said quietly. Nobody did, Rax agreed. That was 18 years ago. Since then, the humans have made their policy very clear. Their space is their space. Cross it without permission with an armed ship, and you don't get captured. You don't get arrested. You get destroyed. Instantly. No warnings. No second chances. But Zekthor crossed in an unarmed courier ship, the officer pointed out. Which is why he might survive the next few hours, Rax said. The humans have different rules for unarmed vessels. They'll detain him, question him, probably hold him while they figure out what to do. But us? He gestured at the fleet outside. We're armed warships. If we cross that line, we're dead. And it won't just be us. The humans will ask where we came from. They'll track down our bases. They'll find everyone who ever worked with us. And then, not. He didn't need to finish the sentence. Across the fleet, similar conversations were happening. In Silvara's fighter, she was explaining to her crew why they couldn't pursue. I've been a bounty hunter for 23 years, she told them. I've tracked targets across 40 systems. I've faced down pirates, smugglers, military deserters, and war criminals. I've taken risks that would make most people's skin crawl. But I will not cross into human space. Not for 50 million credits. Not for any amount of money. But they're just humans, one of her crew said. They're a young species. Whoa. They're cast inside. We have better technology. Better weapons. Better ships. Silvara pulled up a file on her computer and transmitted it to the crew stations. Read that. The file was a Galactic Council intelligence report on human military capabilities. Her crew read in silence, their expressions changing as they went through the document. This says humans have a concept called mutually assured destruction. One crew member said slowly. They built enough weapons to destroy their own planet dozens of times over. They pointed those weapons at each other. They came within minutes of actually using them, multiple times. They almost destroyed themselves before they even reached space, Silvara confirmed. Does that sound like a species that makes rational decisions about proportional response? Another crew member spoke up. This section talks about human military doctrine. It says they have a policy called overwhelming force. If you attack them with one ship, they respond with 10. If you attack one of their colonies, they respond by eliminating your entire organization. They don't believe in measured responses. They believe in total victory. Argown. Now you understand, Silvara said. Humans don't think like we do. We calculate risks and rewards. We weigh proportional responses. We consider diplomatic solutions. Humans, they calculate one thing. How do we make absolutely certain this never happens again? And their answer is always the same. Total destruction of the threat. In another ship, a Draxan pack leader was having a similar discussion with his warriors. The stories about humans aren't exaggerated, he told his pack. If anything, they're understated. I met a human once, in a neutral station. This was years ago, before I knew better. I insulted him. Nothing serious, just the kind of trash talk that happens in bars. His warriors waited. Nothing. At first, he just looked at me and said, I'll remember that. Then he left. The pack leader's expression was grim. 3 years later, I was running a job in the Kellis system. Suddenly, human patrol ships showed up. They knew my ship's signature. They knew my name. They knew everything about me. They arrested me. Said I had outstanding warrants in human space for threatening behavior toward a human citizen. That bar insult. 3 years later, they'd tracked me across the galaxy for an insult. What happened? One warrior asked. I spent 6 months in a human detention facility. They treated me fairly, followed their own laws. But the message was clear. They don't forget. Ever. Insult a human, and they'll remember. Harm a human, and they'll hunt you forever. The pack leader looked at his warriors seriously. That's why we're not crossing that border. Because even if we somehow managed to capture Zekthor and escape, the humans would remember. They'd track us down. Maybe not today. Maybe not next year. But eventually, they'd come. And when they did, we'd all die. Back on the Crimson Talon, Rax was reading through more historical files about humans. His tactical officer was doing the same, his expression growing more disturbed with each page. Sir, this file talks about human history before they reached space. They had hundreds of wars. Some of them killed millions of their own people. They invented weapons specifically designed to kill as many as possible as quickly as possible. They're an aggressive species, Rax said. Everyone knows that. No, sir, you don't understand. The officer pulled up specific sections. They didn't just fight over resources or territory. They fought over ideas, over beliefs, over concepts. And they didn't stop fighting until one side was completely defeated. Total war. Total victory. No compromises. Rax read the sections his officer had highlighted. Wars that lasted years. Decades. Generations. Humans who kept fighting long after any rational species would have surrendered. There's a section here about human psychology, the officer continued. It says humans have unusually strong emotional responses to threats. Something in their evolutionary history made them extremely aggressive when they feel threatened. The report calls it persistence, hunting behavior. They don't give up. They don't stop. They just keep coming until the threat is eliminated. Persistence hunting, Rax asked. Ancient humans hunted prey by chasing it, the officer explained. Not fast chases. Long chases. They would follow prey animals for days, never stopping, never giving up, until the prey literally collapsed from exhaustion. Then, they'd kill it. That behavior is still in their psychology. When they decide something is a threat, they pursue it until it's gone, no matter how long it takes. Rax felt cold. He thought about the Corsair fleet again. The humans had spent an entire week hunting down every single Corsair asset. Not just the military targets. Everything. They'd pursued the threat until it was completely, totally eliminated. A message came through from another ship in the fleet. Commander Rax, this is Captain Vel. We're leaving. The bounty isn't worth it. If Zekthor comes back out, maybe we'll try again. But we're not waiting here. This place feels wrong. Rax understood the feeling. Something about being this close to human space made his scales itch. It was like standing at the edge of a sleeping predator's den. You knew that if you stepped inside, the predator would wake up, and it would be angry. Acknowledged, Captain Vel. Safe travels. One by one, the other ships started leaving. Some would wait at nearby systems, hoping Zekthor might somehow escape human space. Others were abandoning the hunt entirely, deciding that 50 million credits wasn't worth the risk. Within hours, only 3 ships remained at the border. Silvara's fighter, Rax's ship, and a small scout vessel belonging to a hunter who was too stubborn or too greedy to leave. They sat in the darkness, watching the wall of warning buoys, and waited to see if Zekthor would ever come back out. None of them really thought he would. Zekthor flew through human space for 3 hours before anything happened. 3 hours of silence, and darkness, and growing fear. His sensors showed nothing. No ships, no stations. No signs of civilization at all. Just empty space and distant stars. Maybe the humans didn't patrol this region. Maybe he could just fly through their territory and come out the other side. Maybe all the stories were exaggerated. Then his computer spoke. Warning. Detecting multiple targeting locks. Source. Unknown. Distance. Unknown. Nature. Unknown. Zekthor's hands flew across his controls, checking his sensors. Nothing. His screens showed empty space. But his ship's defensive systems were screaming that something had locked weapons onto him. Show me where it's coming from, he shouted at the computer. Unable to determine. Sensors show no vessels in range. However, weapons lock is confirmed. Recommend immediate evasive action. How could something lock weapons on him without his sensors detecting it? Zekthor had expensive, military-grade sensors on his ship. They could detect vessels at extreme ranges, but now they were showing nothing. A new transmission came through, audio only. The voice was flat, emotionless, and human. Unidentified vessel. You have entered restricted space without authorization. Power down all weapons systems immediately. Reduce velocity to station keeping. Prepare to be boarded. You have 60 seconds to comply. Failure to comply will result in destruction of your vessel. This is your only warning. Zekthor's hands were shaking. The voice had said all of that without any emotion. Like reading from a script. Like it didn't matter whether he complied or not. Like destroying his ship would be no different from filing a report. Wait, he called out. I'm unarmed. This is a civilian courier vessel. 50 seconds. Zekthor scrambled to power down his systems. His ship didn't have many weapons to begin with. Just a small plasma cannon for defense against asteroids, and a few countermeasure systems. He shut them all down. Weapons offline. I'm complying. Reduce velocity. Zekthor killed his engines, letting the ship drift. His heart was pounding. He still couldn't see anything on his sensors. Where was the human ship? How were they targeting him? Compliance confirmed. Remain at current position. Do not attempt to restart engines. Do not attempt to charge weapons. Do not attempt to enter jump space. A patrol vessel will arrive to intercept you within approximately 4 hours. Any deviation from these instructions will result in immediate destruction. The transmission ended. 4 hours. Zekthor sat in his cockpit, staring at his blank sensors, knowing that somewhere out there, weapons were pointed at him. Weapons from ships he couldn't even see. He tried to keep calm. The humans had said he would be boarded, not destroyed. That was good. That meant they at least followed some kind of procedure for unarmed vessels. But 4 hours was a long time to sit and wait and think about all the stories he'd heard. Stories about the Corsair fleet. Stories about human ruthlessness. Stories about species who crossed into human space and were never seen again. He pulled up his ship's information database and searched for everything he could find about humans. The file was marked with warnings and cautions. Much of the information was, old humans didn't share much data with other species. They kept to themselves, trading only at designated border stations, maintaining diplomatic relations but never getting too close to other civilizations. Zekthor read about human history. Wars that had killed millions. Weapons that could burn entire cities in seconds. A species that had nearly destroyed itself multiple times before finally reaching some kind of peace. But the peace hadn't made them soft. If anything, it had made them more dangerous. United humanity had turned outward, spreading to the stars. And they'd brought their weapons with them. The file included reports from various species that had encountered human vessels. The reports were consistent. Humans were professional, efficient, and absolutely uncompromising about their territory. They followed their own rules strictly, but those rules were harsh. One report caught Zekthor's attention. It was from a Draxan trader who had accidentally drifted into human space due to a navigation error. They intercepted us within minutes. The report read, "We couldn't even see their ships on our sensors until they were right next to us. They boarded us immediately." The human soldiers were polite but firm. They checked every cargo container. They scanned every computer system. They questioned every crew member. When they were satisfied we were actually traders and not a threat, they escorted us back to the border. The whole process took 6 hours. They didn't hurt anyone. But the message was clear. They were in complete control. We were in their space, and we existed there only because they allowed it. 6 hours of interrogation and searching for an accidental border crossing. What would they do to someone who crossed intentionally while being chased by bounty hunters? Zekthor waited. The hours crawled by. After 3 hours and 47 minutes, his sensors finally detected something. A ship appearing on his display as if materializing from nothing. One moment, empty space. The next moment, a vessel. It was sleek and dark, covered in angles that seemed designed to absorb sensor scans. That was how they'd hidden from his sensors. Stealth technology. The other species in the galaxy had stealth ships, but nothing like this. This was complete invisibility until the humans decided to reveal themselves. The ship was small, about the size of a corvette. But Zekthor could see weapons mounted all over it. Missile tubes, energy cannons, point defense systems. It looked like someone had taken a ship and covered every available surface with weapons. A new transmission came through, this time with video. A human face appeared on Zekthor's screen. Zekthor had seen humans before in videos and images, but never this close. The human was male, with dark skin and black hair cut very short. His eyes were brown and intense. He wore a dark uniform with insignia that Zekthor didn't recognize. "I am Lieutenant Commander Hayes, of the Human Defense Space Vessel Resolute," the human said. His voice was calm but carried an edge of authority. "You are in violation of Human Stellar Alliance territorial law. State your species, identity, and reason for entering restricted space." "I am Zekthor of Vrillia," Zekthor said quickly. "I'm an information broker. I entered your space because I was being pursued by bounty hunters. I had nowhere else to go." Hayes' expression didn't change. "You entered human space to escape pursuers." "Yes. I'm sorry. I know I wasn't authorized, but they were going to kill me. Stand by." The transmission went silent, but the video feed remained active. Zekthor could see Hayes looking at something off-screen, reading information on displays that Zekthor couldn't see. The human's face was unreadable. After a minute, Hayes looked back at the camera. "Our sensors detected a fleet of 20 vessels at our border approximately 4 hours ago. Those vessels remain at the border, but have not crossed. We assess those to be your pursuers." "Confirmed?" "Yes. 20 bounty hunters." "Nature of bounty?" Zekthor hesitated. Should he tell the truth? Would the humans care about data theft from the Hegemony Council? "I asked a question," Hayes said. His voice hadn't gotten louder or angrier, but something about it made Zekthor's skin go cold. 50 million credits. The Hegemony Council put the bounty on me. I stole classified data from them. What data? Military secrets. Information about their weapons programs. And evidence. Evidence of war crimes. For the first time, Hayes' expression changed slightly. His eyes narrowed just a fraction. "Explain." "The Hegemony Council destroyed 3 worlds belonging to a species called the Trell. They claimed it was a plague, but I have evidence it was deliberate. They tested biological weapons on the entire Trell species. Then they destroyed the worlds to cover it up." Hayes was quiet for several seconds. "You have proof of this?" "Yes, complete records, communications, orders, everything." "Stand by." The transmission went dark. Zekthor sat in his cockpit, alone with his thoughts. He'd just told a human military officer that he was a data thief, with evidence of genocide. He had no idea how the humans would respond. 10 minutes passed. 20. Half an hour. Then the transmission reopened. Hayes' face appeared again. "You will be taken to Station Gamma 7 for processing," Hayes said. "Power down all systems except life support. We will tow your vessel. Do not attempt to resist or deviate. Any resistance will be met with immediate force." "I understand," Zekthor said. "One more thing," Hayes added. "Our computers have accessed your ship's navigational logs. We know where you've been, who you've met with, and every transmission you've sent in the last 30 days. We know about your pursuers, their ship signatures, and their organizational affiliations. This information has been forwarded to our command structure. Zekthor felt his blood run cold. They'd hacked his ship. Completely. They'd bypassed all his security systems, like they weren't even there. How did you? You're in human space now, Hayes said. Nothing here is private, unless we allow it to be. Remember that. The transmission ended. A mechanical arm extended from the Resolute and clamped onto Zekthor's ship. The courier vessel was pulled through space like a toy. Zekthor watched through his cockpit window as they traveled. More human ships appeared on his sensors. Not by arriving, but by simply revealing themselves. They'd been there all along, invisible on his screens. Destroyers. Cruisers. What looked like a carrier with dozens of small fighters docked to it. Every ship was heavily armed. Every ship looked ready for war. They reached a station after 2 hours of travel. It was huge, larger than anything Zekthor had seen outside of major trading hubs. But this wasn't a trading hub. This was a military installation. Weapons platforms surrounded it. Shield generators powerful enough to protect entire fleets. Sensor arrays that probably could detect a ship entering jump space halfway across the galaxy. The humans had built a fortress in space. Zekthor's ship was pulled into a docking bay. The bay doors closed behind him, and he heard the atmosphere being pumped back in. Gravity systems activated. Armed soldiers were waiting when his boarding ramp opened. Humans in full combat armor, carrying weapons that looked far too large and powerful for station security. Exit your vessel, one soldier commanded. Hands visible. Move slowly. Zekthor obeyed. He walked down the ramp on shaking legs. The soldiers surrounded him immediately. One of them produced a scanning device and waved it over Zekthor's body. Clean. No weapons. No explosives. No biological agents. This way, another soldier said, gesturing with his weapon. They led Zekthor through the station corridors. Everything was clean, efficient, organized. Humans moved through the corridors with purpose. All of them in uniform. All of them looking disciplined and professional. They brought him to a room. It was small, with white walls and a single table with 2 chairs. It looked like an interrogation room. Sit, the soldier ordered. Someone will be with you shortly. The soldiers left, and Zekthor heard a door lock behind them. He sat at the table and waited. He'd escaped the bounty hunters. But now he was in the hands of the humans. And from everything he'd seen so far, he wasn't sure which was worse. The stories about humans hadn't been exaggerated. If anything, they'd been understated. The humans were efficient, organized, technologically advanced, and absolutely in control of their space. And Zekthor was completely at their mercy. The door opened. A woman entered. Human, wearing a different uniform from the soldiers. She carried a datapad and sat down across from Zekthor. Hello, Zekthor, she said. Her voice was neither friendly nor hostile, just neutral. My name is Commander Chen. We're going to have a conversation about why you're here, what you stole, and what happens next. I suggest you answer all my questions completely and honestly. What if I don't? Zekthor asked, before he could stop himself. Chen looked at him with eyes that seemed to see right through him. Then you'll spend a very long time in a very small cell while we verify everything ourselves. We have your ship. We have your computer systems. We have your data. We don't need your cooperation. But things will go faster and easier for you, if we have it. She opened her datapad. Now, she said, let's start from the beginning. Commander Chen asked questions for 6 hours. She was thorough, patient, and relentless. Every time Zekthor answered something, she asked 3 more questions to verify it. She cross-referenced everything he said with data they'd pulled from his ship's computers. She asked about the Hegemony Council data theft, about the evidence of the Trell genocide, about his contacts, his clients, his entire information network, about the bounty hunters pursuing him. Zekthor answered everything honestly. He was too exhausted to lie, and besides, Chen had made it clear They already knew most of it anyway. They'd hacked his computers so completely that they probably knew things about his business that he'd forgotten. When Chen finally closed her datapad, Zekthor was slumped in his chair, physically and mentally drained. "Thank you for your cooperation," Chen said. She stood and walked to the door, then paused. "You'll remain in detention while we review your case. It could take several days. Food will be provided. You'll have access to basic amenities. Don't try to escape. You're in the middle of a military station in the heart of human space. There's nowhere to go." "What's going to happen to me?" Zekthor asked. Chen looked at him thoughtfully. "That depends on what we find when we verify your information. If everything you've told us is true, you have some value. If you've lied, or if the data about the Trell genocide is false, you'll be turned over to the Hegemony Council, as per our extradition treaty." "You have an extradition treaty with them?" "We have treaties with most major powers," Chen said. "We don't involve ourselves in galactic politics, but we maintain diplomatic relationships. That includes honoring extradition requests for criminals who flee into our space." She tilted her head. "Of course, we only extradite people after they've been processed through our legal system first. And if we find evidence that the requesting party intends to harm the individual for political reasons rather than legitimate crimes, we reassess." She left, and guards escorted Zekthor to a cell. It was small but clean, with a bed, a bathroom, and a small desk. The walls were solid metal. There were no windows. The door locked with a heavy sound that made Zekthor's heart sink. He lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling, wondering what would happen next. 3 days passed. Zekthor saw no one except the guards who brought his meals. The food was bland, but nutritious. Human food, designed for human biology, but with enough nutrients that it wouldn't harm him. He spent the time thinking about his situation. He'd escaped the bounty hunters, but he'd trapped himself in human space. The humans would review his case, verify his data, and then decide his fate. If they believed him, maybe they'd let him go. If they didn't believe him, or if they decided he was more trouble than he was worth, they'd hand him over to the Hegemony Council. Either way, his freedom was in their hands. On the 4th day, the door opened, and Commander Chen returned with 2 guards. "Come with us," she said. They led him through the station to a different section. This area looked more administrative than military. They entered a large office, where a man sat behind a desk, reviewing holographic displays. The man was older than Chen, with gray in his hair and lines on his face that spoke of years of responsibility. His uniform had more insignia, suggesting high rank. "Sit," the man said, gesturing to a chair in front of his desk. Zekthor sat. Chen stood beside him. The guards remained by the door. "Thor. Zek, I am Admiral Marcus Webb," the man said, "commander of this sector. I've reviewed your case personally, including the data you stole from the Hegemony Council." Zekthor waited, his heart's beating rapidly. "The evidence you possess regarding the Trell genocide is authentic," Webb said. "Our analysts have verified it. The Hegemony Council did indeed test biological weapons on the Trell species, then destroyed their worlds to eliminate witnesses and test subjects. The genocide killed approximately 4 billion individuals." Zekthor felt sick. He'd known the data was real, but hearing it confirmed was different. "This presents us with a complicated situation," Webb continued. "The Hegemony Council has filed an official extradition request. They want you returned to face trial for data theft and treason. Under normal circumstances, we would honor that request. We have a treaty." "But," Zekthor asked. "But the evidence you possess changes things," Webb said. "Genocide is considered a crime against sapient species under Galactic Council law. The Hegemony Council is in violation. They committed this crime, then lied about it to the entire galaxy for 30 years. So you won't extradite me?" "I didn't say that." Webb leaned back in his chair. "Understand something, Zekthor. We don't involve ourselves in galactic politics. We don't take sides in disputes between other powers. We maintain our neutrality very carefully. But we also don't tolerate genocide. It's one of the few things we consider an absolute moral line. ESA. Webb pulled up a new holographic display. The data you stole would be valuable to the Galactic Council. It could force the hegemony to answer for their crimes. But you stole it for profit. Not justice. You were planning to sell it to the highest bidder. Zekthor couldn't deny it. However, Webb continued, your motivations are less important than the information itself. We've made a decision. We're going to offer you a choice. What kind of choice? Option 1. We honor the extradition request. You go back to the Hegemony Council. You face their justice system. Based on what we know of their courts, you'll be convicted and executed. Zekthor's skin went pale. Option 2. You cooperate with us. You testify before the Galactic Council about what you found. You provide all the evidence you have. You help expose the genocide. In exchange, we grant you protected status within human space. The Hegemony Council can't touch you here. No one can. You want me to testify against the Council? Zekthor asked. They'll try to kill me. They're already trying to kill you, Webb pointed out. The difference is that under our protection, they won't succeed. We don't take half measures with security. If we say you're protected, you're protected. Anyone who tries to harm you in human space will face the full weight of our military. Zekthor thought about it. Testifying against the Hegemony Council would make him a permanent target. But staying under human protection meant living in human space, surrounded by a species that terrified half the galaxy. Why do you care? He asked. Why does it matter to you what happened to the Trell? Webb's expression hardened. Because humans know what genocide looks like. We've committed it against each other in our own history. We know the horror of it. We know the cost. And we decided, as a unified species, that we would never allow it to happen again. Not to us, and not to others, if we could prevent it. He leaned forward. The Trell can't speak for themselves. They're all dead. But their evidence can speak for them. And you're the one who has that evidence. So I'm asking you, what do you want to do with it? Zekthor thought about the 4 billion Trell who had died. He thought about the Hegemony Council, comfortable and secure in their power, confident they would never face consequences for what they'd done. He thought about the bounty hunters waiting at the border, and about how the humans had made them all stop with nothing but reputation and resolve. I'll testify, he said. Webb nodded. Good. Commander Chen will handle the arrangements. You'll be given quarters on this station. You'll work with our legal team to prepare testimony. When the time comes, we'll transport you to the Galactic Council headquarters with full security. And after the testimony? Zekthor asked. What happens to me then? That depends on you, Webb said. If you want to stay in human space, we'll arrange something. Work, residence, protection. If you want to leave, we'll make sure you have the resources to disappear somewhere safe. We don't imprison people for helping us. Zekthor. We're not the Hegemony Council. The meeting ended, and Chen escorted Zekthor to a different part of the station. These quarters were much nicer than the cell. A small apartment with a bedroom, bathroom, living space, and even a window looking out at the stars. You'll have limited access to the station, Chen said. Certain areas are restricted. Guards will accompany you anywhere outside this section. Consider it protective custody, rather than imprisonment. What about the bounty hunters? Zekthor asked. The ones waiting at the border? Chen smiled slightly. Let me show you something. She pulled up a screen and showed him a recorded transmission. It was footage from the border, from human sensors watching the bounty hunter fleet. In the recording, the 3 ships that had remained at the border were sitting in space, waiting. Then, a human patrol vessel appeared, decloaking right in front of them. The patrol ship broadcast a message. Attention unidentified vessels. You are within sensor range of human territorial space. Your continued presence suggests hostile intent. You have 1 hour to leave this region. If you remain, you will be classified as a threat to human security and dealt with accordingly. The bounty hunter ships immediately powered up and left, jumping away as fast as their drives could manage. They learned their lesson, Chen said. Don't wait at our borders with weapons ready. Don't loiter near our space. And definitely don't come inside. She showed him another piece of footage. This one was from 3 days ago. A single ship had crossed the border, a small, fast vessel that tried to use stealth to slip past human sensors. It had lasted 30 seconds before human defense systems detected it and destroyed it. The explosion was brief and absolute. That was a bounty hunter, Chen said. Got greedy. Thought he could sneak across, grab you, and leave before we noticed. He was wrong. Zekthor watched the explosion loop on the screen. You didn't warn him. We warned all of them when they approached our border, Chen said. The warning buoys make it very clear. Unauthorized armed vessels will be destroyed. No exceptions. He chose to cross anyway. That was his decision. She turned off the screen. The other hunters got the message. They've all left. The bounty is still active, but no one's willing to enter human space to collect it. You're safe here. Over the following weeks, Zekthor worked with human legal experts to prepare his testimony. They were thorough and professional, treating the case with the seriousness it deserved. They organized the evidence, verified every piece of data, and built an ironclad case against the Hegemony Council. Zekthor learned more about humans during this time. They were intense and focused, but not cruel. They followed rules strictly, but the rules were generally fair. They were cautious with outsiders. But once they decided to trust someone, they protected them completely. He also learned why other species feared them. It wasn't just their weapons or their technology. It was their mindset. Humans had learned hard lessons from their own violent history. They'd nearly destroyed themselves multiple times. They'd committed atrocities against their own people. And from those experiences, they'd developed an absolute refusal to be victims again. They would never let another species do to them what they had done to each other. They would never allow their people to be attacked without responding with overwhelming force. It wasn't cruelty. It was a survival instinct, hardened by centuries of war and suffering. The day came for Zekthor to testify. Human security transported him to the Galactic Council headquarters in a convoy of warships. The Hegemony Council protested, calling it an invasion. The humans ignored them. Zekthor stood before the Galactic Council and told them everything. He presented the evidence. He showed them the communications, the orders, the detailed records of biological weapons tests. He showed them what the Hegemony Council had done to the Trell. The council representatives listened in horror. The evidence was undeniable. The Hegemony Council tried to discredit Zekthor. They called him a thief and a traitor. But they couldn't discredit the evidence itself. It was all verified, authenticated, and absolute. The Galactic Council voted to investigate. It would take years, probably, to bring actual justice. Galactic bureaucracy moved slowly, but the truth was out now. The Hegemony Council would face consequences. After the testimony, human ships took Zekthor back to their space. Admiral Webb met with him one final time. You did well, Webb said. The Hegemony Council will face investigation and probably sanctions. It's not perfect justice, but it's better than silence. What happens to me now? Zekthor asked. That's up to you. We've arranged several options. You can stay here, work as a consultant on xenocultural matters. You can relocate to one of our civilian systems and start a new life. Or we can give you a new identity and resources to disappear into the outer systems. Zekthor thought about it. He'd spent his whole life running, hiding, dealing in secrets. Maybe it was time for something different. I'd like to stay, he said, if that's allowed. It's allowed, Webb said. Welcome to human space, Zekthor. Try not to break any more laws. Months passed. Zekthor settled into his new life on Station Gamma 7. He worked as a consultant, helping human intelligence understand information networks in other species' territories. It was similar to his old work, but legal and without the constant fear. He made friends with some of the humans on the station. He learned their customs, their humor, their way of seeing the universe. They were strange, these humans, but not monsters. One day, he was having a meal in the station cafeteria when a young human officer sat down across from him. "You're the guy who testified against the Hegemony Council," the officer said. "Yes," Zekthor replied. "That took guts. Half the galaxy is scared of the Council." "I was more scared of staying silent," Zekthor admitted. The officer nodded. "You know why they call our species aggressive, right? Why other species fear us." Zekthor thought about the Corsair fleet. About the destruction of 4 worlds. About the hunter who crossed the border and died 30 seconds later. "I think so," he said. "It's because we learned our lessons the hard way," the officer said. "We nearly destroyed ourselves. We committed terrible crimes against each other. Genocide, nuclear war, biological weapons. All of it." The officer looked out the cafeteria window at the stars. "So we made a choice. Never again. Never let it happen to us. Never let it happen to others if we can stop it. We don't start fights, but we finish them. Permanently." "The other species call you aggressive," Zekthor said. The officer smiled slightly. "We call it learning from history. Better to be feared and alive than peaceful and dead." Zekthor nodded slowly. He understood now. The humans weren't cruel. They were careful. They'd seen what happened when you let threats grow unchallenged. They'd learned that sometimes the only way to prevent atrocities was to respond to them with absolute force. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't gentle. But it worked. "I'm glad I came here," Zekthor said. "Even though it was terrifying. Most good decisions are," the officer replied. "Welcome to human space, Zekthor. You're safe here. As long as you need to be." Zekthor looked around the cafeteria at the humans going about their business, eating, talking, laughing. They seemed so normal, so ordinary. But he'd seen what they could do when threatened. He'd seen their weapons, their technology, their absolute unwillingness to compromise on security. The galaxy feared them. And now Zekthor understood why. But he also understood that fear was the point. The humans wanted other species to be afraid. They wanted everyone to know that crossing into human space meant consequences. Because as long as everyone was too afraid to attack them, the humans could live in peace. It was a strange kind of peace, built on reputation and threat. But it was peace, nonetheless. And for Zekthor, who had spent his life running from danger, peace was enough.